Welcome, everybody. It's Branson, God's comic, and it is Branson has issues where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. Tonight's guest, oh, what an icon of comedy is here on this table. Not on the table, in front of the table. If he was on the table, it'd be impolite. Why wouldn't it be impolite? Because he's Russian. That's right. The famous, the world famous, the iconic Yakov Smirnoff is with us tonight, and this is the day after Mother's Day. Why, do you have a mother, or have you found that too difficult to grapple with?
Yeah, I've got a mother.
What the heck? That was the word. It was like, and then, like you're a homeless guy under a bridge trying to start your podcast.
Look, I just want the audience to see me for who I really am. A homeless guy you found under the bridge one day.
But my homeless guy, my little homeless guy, just feed him gum. Folks, you don't know this, but if you come to the studio, and only two of my fans have ever made it into the Sanctorum Sanctorum, there's gum. There wasn't gum when St. Nick was here, Wyatt. Do you remember when St. Nick was here?
Yeah, I remember the first thing he said to me.
What was it?
Where's the gum?
Oh, yes. And guess what we didn't have then?
The gum.
But then we also had somebody that used to do our lawn trimming, and that was Ashley Haas. Do you remember Ashley?
Yes, Ashley Haas. Wasn't she the one who gave us those novelty gumballs?
She gave us novelty gumballs, yes.
Real funny, though. Real funny.
Well, but anyways, they were gag gumballs.
Yeah.
Unchewable.
I gagged on them, which I think is how they got their name.
Yes. You know what? Why did they have gags when you were growing up? When I was growing up, they used to have this rack in the magic, what do you call it? Stores where they'd sell magic equipment. Because, I was a magician. You know that, right? Did I ever tell you, Wyatt, that I was a professional magician?
Oh, yeah. You keep showing me new tricks that I'm just like, how did you do that?
Baffled, befuddled.
Befuddled, yes.
Well, listen, I was a professional at one time and made my living doing it. So I used to go into little magic shops, which, by the way, like a lot of the shops throughout the world, have gone by the wayside because now everything's the internet. Why? You just buy everything by the internet. So kids your age, a little bit younger, will never know what it was like to walk into a store. Actually have to open a door and walk in and look at stuff sitting there, and you're like, oh, it's not a virtual tour. It's an actual tour where they're actually here, and I can actually look at it or steal it. You have noticed, Wyatt, that kleptomaniacs have had a much more difficult time with their life because they have less things to steal. And shoplifting has gone down dramatically. And you're thinking maybe people are getting kinder, nicer, and more virtuous. No, they're no longer shopping anywhere but online. Honestly, Wyatt, how do you shoplift an online Amazon purchase?
There's a few ways you can do it.
Well, give me two.
Okay, number one, porch pirating. What?
No, I wasn't expecting you to actually have an answer. So
you didn't expect me to come prepared for this.
No, because I wasn't prepared. I didn't even know I was going to say this. Next thing I know, you actually had an answer. All right, so porch piracy would be one form of internet shoplifting. What would be number two? You said there was a few. That's three, I think. Few isn't three. Isn't few three? Three is few.
Something like that. Yeah.
Let's just say two. Go ahead and two. What's the other way you can shoplift online?
Credit card fraud.
Oh.
It's technically shoplifting if it's not your money.
Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah, but isn't that actually, I see what you're saying. You're in a good ballpark, but isn't that actually a different type of, that's like a felony. Like shoplifting, I think, is a misdemeanor maybe, or maybe it's not.
Look, are you really telling me that if stores couldn't make shoplifting a felony, they wouldn't?
Well, listen, in California,
you are openly invited to shoplift. I don't know how that's a good example.
You have to kill the guy, dismember them, put all of their pieces in separate items, bury them in various parts of the community, have the DNA all over your body, have it registered, have it scooped with a swab, have it run through the chemistry to prove the DNA is yours. Then you come in and admit it. Yeah, I killed him. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was upset. I was irritated. I was offended. And after all of that, and a confession, and glad I did it, no remorse, happy I did it, only then do they consider whether you should be charged with shoplifting.
You know, I heard that the only way you can really have to deal with felonies in California is to get charged in Michigan.
Hey, well, there you go. And then get extradited?
Yeah, exactly.
And once they extradite you to California, they give you a mansion.
Yeah, they give, well, I mean, they call it house arrest, but, you
Right.
know, houses in California are mansions, so...
Well, it's house arrest, but little did we know that they're giving you the house. That's what I didn't see coming. Only in California.
Only in California.
By the way, White, I don't know how to tell you this because we mock California on a regular basis. And why not? California
It's the
is an ancient Mayan word for punchline.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do I feel sorry for the poor saps who have to say I was born in California?
Wyatt?
Man, those guys must have it rough,
Wyatt?
you know?
Wyatt?
Yeah. Come on, no. You got something else to say about California? That's where I got some more.
I thought I should.
Okay, all right. So, worst part of California, the southern part,
Oh.
you know? Because
Wyatt.
that's the part where, like, you get all the really rich people.
Wyatt.
I'm sorry, you trying to say something? What?
You were born in California. Southern California. Irvine. Rich. Ostentatious. Arrogant. Narcissistic. Horrific. And you are a native Californian.
No.
Listen, there was a time when it couldn't have been a cooler place to live than California, Wyatt. Seriously. But you know what? I got to tell you something, and I don't know. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I feel like I need to, Wyatt. We have just had, for the first time in history, an American was just elected the Pope of the Catholic Church. There is now officially an American Pope.
You know, my first band was called American Pope.
I didn't know that. What kind of music was it?
It was sort of gospel, bluegrass mix.
Did you wear funny hats?
Oh, yeah. You couldn't call yourself American Pope if you didn't wear the funny American Pope hat.
Well, listen, the first thing that this Pope did, other than say thank you for the votes, was he made merch. He's an American Pope. So he's got merch, he's got shirts, he's got keychains, hats, if I'm not mistaken, and an entire best of reel of his famous sermons. They call them sermons in the Catholic Church, or they call them oratories. I don't know. I'm sure it's more Latin-esque.
Surprisingly, I know very little about whatever goes on in Italy.
Really?
Yeah. I don't really care.
Do you know that Italy has nothing to do with it? Because did you know that Vatican City is its own, country?
Wait. So you're saying that an American went to a foreign country and claimed dibs?
Yes.
That is the most American thing a pope could ever do.
That's like the president saying, hey, I'm going to buy Greenland. I mean, it's so absurd no one would ever utter those.
Yeah, but this guy did it. He did it.
Off. And he's from Chicago. So I think he's a Cubs fan. White. How in the world is it going to look on an Easter when all the world, makes a pilgrimage to the Vatican to be blessed by the Pope, and he's wearing a Cubs jersey?
And instead of prayers, you just hear, hey, I'm walking here.
Well, that's New York, but still
Listen,
a good reference
Chicago,
point.
New York, they're very similar.
Listen, you are an aficionado of pizza. You love pizza. How do you like Chicago deep dish pizza?
Okay, so.
Here we go.
I guess, why do you make me say these things? So, my official stance on pizza.
Has to be thin crust.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
What I want is ratios. You can have as much crust as you want.
Okay.
Or as little crust. It's fine as long as you balance the sauce, cheese, and other toppings accordingly. If I have a thin crust pizza where the sauce is piled so thick it's about at twice the thickness of the crust.
Yeah.
That's not a pizza. That's tomato soup with cheese. On the other hand, if I have a deep dish pizza with barely any sauce, that's just eating bread with extra steps.
Have you ever had a deep dish pizza?
Oh, yeah.
Where?
Not Chicago. I don't think I've been to Chicago, but Chicago-esque places.
No, you've been to Chicago.
I have? Then Chicago, then.
Okay, but I don't remember us getting a pizza there.
Well, listen.
Yeah.
Would I ever realistically let you take me to Chicago without trying their pizza?
Yeah, I think you were youngin' though. I think you were a young kid, so you didn't have a lot of. We went to the museum there. They had dinosaur bones. Remember, you and I were there with your mom.
You mean
the Museum of Natural History?
The museum with dinosaur bones? The only one? Oh, I think I remember that.
Well, the only one where the dinosaurs went extinct by eating deep dish pizza.
Well, that's what I'm telling you, man. Chicago deep dish. You got to be careful with it.
Well, anyways, I'm not a deep dish guy. I'm not a big thick guy. I'm not a Chicago thick guy.
Yeah.
I like it thin. I do like New York pizza. I will be honest. On the street. Now, have you ever been to New York, Wyatt?
Never say those words to me again.
Okay. Well, I know you haven't. I know you despise it, but nevertheless, you haven't seen everything. You never made it to Times Square. We never made it there. I know. Well, you hate driving it. What if you walked around and saw stuff? Would that be as bad if you didn't have to drive it?
Oh, yeah, sure. Walk around a city like you're stuffed in a can of sardines. Yeah, that sounds fun.
You know what? It's the mood. It's the vibe. It's the let's try it once kind of thing. It's New York. New York.
Yeah. It's like drinking snake venom. Let's try it once so we know why we never want to do it again.
Do you know why you drink snake venom?
Well, yeah, because it's probably not dangerous in this.
Well, it isn't because you're drinking it. It's not going in
it's
your.
only if it's in your. Yeah.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So again, you had a great analogy, a metaphor, but it rang hollow because you didn't understand what.
Does it ring hollow if I already knew that drinking snake venom isn't dangerous? Not that I would say, audience, that you should be drinking snake venom. Please do not. But if you did, you're probably going to be fine.
Wyatt, if we have a fan base made up of people that would think it would make sense to drink snake venom, I think we're on the way out.
Either that or we are about to be the next ones in. Do you have any idea how popular you have to be where people will hear you say drink snake venom and go, that's my afternoon?
I'm in. Well, we didn't say to. We said don't do that.
Well, exactly.
We said if you did,
but this is
it may not hurt you because it's not in your bloodstream.
But this is 2025. Everyone knows the best way to get someone to do something is to explicitly tell them not to.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. I mean, why do you think people ate Tide Pods? Was it because people kept saying eat them? No. Because they kept saying don't eat them.
And yet they did. And is it your age that was doing that, or is it people below you? You
Look,
can't take credit for that.
I would really, really hope it wasn't my generation, but I can't say for certain.
Well, I will say this for certain. Each generation thinks it's smarter than the one that went before. I don't know what it is about Americans and youth that thinks, and I was once one, so perhaps I was doing the same thing because I don't really remember being 18 very much, and it was quite a while ago for me, but not for you. That was only 10 years ago for you. Do you remember being an 18-year-old?
Yeah, barely.
Okay. But don't you feel like if you go talk to an 18-year-old right now, you're like, wow, were we that immature? You always feel like, man, we weren't like those guys, but you were. And I noticed that there's this very incredible disconnect from reality. They certainly don't think logically, coherently, deeply. I don't see that happening in America. This is part of why they want to unravel the Department of Education because it's a failure and it does nothing but try to create advocates for progressive causes as opposed to teach. That's why it has such a convoluted view of reality by saying this can be that, I can be that, and if I identify as this, it's true. They're trying to make things so unrealistic and so untangible that literally you could manipulate people into becoming whatever minion you demand them to be. Suddenly, if we don't stop driving cars, the earth will collapse on itself because we superheated it. Suddenly, if we don't stop eating meat, the cow flatulence is going to destroy the ozone. Suddenly, if everybody doesn't stop flying in airplanes, except the people that fly in airplanes to try to get places to have conventions where they tell people not to fly in airplanes, we're going to watch the entire world collapse, except for the multi-billionaire oligarchs who've created their own special secret escape place where they can go and live alone where they belong. Wyatt, it's like people don't care about what is true, and it matters what you think about reality so you can make assessments. Being a conservative means you want to conserve wisdom. You want to conserve values of before things got less tangible, less absolute. When things become an open game for whatever your subjectivity desires, there's no longer subjective truth. And without truth, we can't actually function effectively. It's like being a slave, but you would think, well, after all the slavery that we had looked at it in this nation and around the world that's happening today, I might add, we feel like it's immoral and it's anti-human, and well, let's get rid of it. But yet, there's more than one way to be a slave. I don't know if you know this, but I actually did a little rant about that one time, a little rant about observing our nation, our country, our founding, even the slavery question. And could you be guilty of not be owning a slave, but being one unbeknownst to you, subconsciously? Below the surface, you have succumbed to giving away your freedom. Seem a little obvious that you couldn't fall for it? Somebody has. As a matter of fact, it looks a little like this. Today on Branson Has Issues, we discuss slavery and the Founding Fathers. Did they have slaves? Who didn't in the 1770s? Then Christians came along and started shoving their let's end slavery beliefs down everyone's throat. Those Bible thumpers. Hey folks, it's God's Comic Brad Stein. Let's talk about the Founding Fathers for a minute, shall we? You need to understand the founders of America if you want to understand America. Why? Because America was their idea. So give them their props. I'll give you a few things educated people should know about them. The founders implemented as the bedrock of America values three categories that PC has intentionally singled out as oppressive. Remember, I've been teaching you about cultural Marxism, and one of the strategies for it to work is to destroy the foundations of what does work. Thus, democratic republic or rule of the people must be destroyed and replaced with rule of the state. How's that work in North Korea? Capitalism. Freedom to own private property and to achieve as much wealth as you're willing to work for must be destroyed by stealing your profit from hard work and redistributing it to those that don't work or aren't as proficient as you, thus crippling your incentive to work. And ultimately, the state will come in and pay people to behave and submit their freedom to the new slaveholders now known as big government. But there's a problematic issue the left has with our founders. That is true. They owned slaves. First off, the term own slaves? Kind of redundant, isn't it? I mean, if you have a slave, you own him. There was no leasing of slaves, no could you rent a slave, right? Well, unless you include indentured servitude, which is like renting yourself out for brutal manual labor in order to, in a few years, pay off your passage to America, or nowadays, your student loans. Kind of like a modern-day version of Molly Mates, without having the option of going home when you're done with additions, but instead you have to go sleep in the shed. Now, most people realize that the founders were very smart, so how did they miss the fact that they owned slaves while writing the Declaration of Independence that included the phrase, "We find these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, amongst which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Not a lot of happy slaves out there, are there? Apparently, the founders were smart enough to create a document that has created more freedom for more humans than any other country in history by dignifying the individual, but were too stupid to realize it also applied to them. Notice the word used as the impetus to the whole concept. The founders believed that slavery was wrong, not because men are innately noble and would come to the conclusion that slavery was wrong on their own, but instead would need a little nudge from a higher source. And when God gives you a nudge, you noticed it. The appeal to the God of the Bible was the reason slavery was inevitably destined to be eliminated. Interesting, when some have tried to use the Bible to justify slavery. But guess what? Oh, you're not going to believe this, atheist. The Bible never justified slavery. Just tried to guide a culture that already had it to treat slaves as having the same dignity their owners have. Thus, that's why we also ended slavery in America. If the founders thought slavery was good, why would they create a document that condemned it? And by the way, the founders didn't invent slavery. Throughout history, every nation, tribe, and group have had a turn being a slave. Matter of fact, there are approximately 46 million slaves in the world today. Yeah. Top slaveholder is India, then China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Uzbekistan, North Korea. You know, all those places you want to take the kids for a good, fun vacation. This goes on and on. So the harsh reality seems to be it's normal for humans to make slaves of others. America didn't invent slavery, no matter what the leftists want to pretend. Humanity invented it. And if you're human, no matter your color, some of your ancestors somewhere had a slave or were one. So if you're blaming slavery hundreds of years ago on your station in life today, I've got a sobering truth. And I say sobering because they forbid me to have gin or vodka. You're never going to be free because slavery comes in different forms, but it always has the same result. Someone is implementing power and control over someone else. So since slavery is historically normal, whose philosophy stopped it? I mean, Darwinism makes it very clear there are no moral rules in nature. Do as you choose, and if you're strong enough to dominate, you get to. Well, in the West, it took Christians to define humans as intrinsically valuable, thus putting all humans on equal footing in the eyes of God. Because of Christianity's revelation to man, we learn that to own another human is therefore immoral. You see, a slave owner gets to tell you what you can learn, what you can't, what you can do for work, what you can't, what you can read, what you can eat, where you can go, where you can't. You get to make no decisions without the master's approval. So essentially, to be a slave means that someone else gets to define your personhood and your autonomy and even your conscience. Someone else gets to literally control who you are while you are their property. So here's what I want to ask you. Since slavery is so evil, and it is, let me ask you this question. Is there slavery in America today? Just observe, is there any group telling you what you may or may not think? Because if there are, and you succumb to their demands, they own you. When you hear someone speak about slavery today, everyone agrees it's immoral. We get it. So do you not see any irony whatsoever in the fact that the only people in the United States that now want to control the thoughts, freedoms, and autonomy of fellow Americans are progressive leftists that say the founding fathers were evil for having slaves? In other words, people that try to control other people's freedoms are evil. I agree. But the only people in America saying you can't speak on a university campus are leftists. The only people claiming your religious beliefs are a smokescreen for discrimination are leftists. The only people claiming that if your conscience says you can't participate in funding abortions, that you're anti-women. And guess who's saying that? Leftists. The only people censoring ideas they can't control? Leftists. They're so good at owning others' freedoms that they've literally fooled themselves into thinking that only their slave master mentality is virtuous. Remember, the Bible says that there are none so blind as he who will not see. Remember what we've learned today then. Beware of people who malign the founding fathers who owned slaves, which was normal to 1700s culture, but then don't give them credit for creating a country that would have to eventually end slavery. A bloody war ensued to show what lengths Americans were willing to go to free people that couldn't free themselves. If, on the other hand, you let certain Americans control your freedom by focusing on the past, as though that's who we are today, to justify returning America to slavery by owning you and your family and your freedom of religion and your freedom of conscience, then don't blame me. I warned you. So how sacred do you treasure liberty? Someone can try to make a slave of me, but I'm on to them. As for me and my house, we don't play that. You know why? Because PC free is liberty. I broke your chains this time, folks. So as you can see, I was well on my way to trying to do something, I guess, provocative and committed to an idea. And that was the original Branson Has Issues. Listen, guys, I got to tell you something. Again, for all of you guys that come every Monday night and watch on a regular basis and have been so loyal, I always like to keep you guys informed because you're the ones that are here every Monday night, unbelievably. So, as I have said to you guys from day one, I want to build the podcast obviously into something that more people listen to and that it can actually generate an income source. Now, that might sound a little, I don't know, like it's only about making money, and it really isn't, but I want to make money because it allows me to do it. You have to understand something. I'm just being honest because those who watch this live, like you guys are, you're my friends, you are my fans, you are my loyal partners that have helped this thing grow from day one. So I always treat you like you have a strategic alliance with me on this thing. So I give you insights and wisdom about what I'm up to, and in the hopes that you can even put in some thoughts and suggestions on this thread and talk to me about it. Now, I always read them and listen because, you guys have always been pretty honest with me. But you have to understand, I'm trying to make this to where it's effective enough that it reaches the most amount of people, because if I'm not doing something worthy of changing people's lives, inspiring them, I'm not really doing anything that's worth anything unless it was just for the money. But it's not for me. I mean, if I just wanted to screw around and do funny things and make funny clips and just try to get a bunch of views and then monetize that like so many people do, I guess I could do that. It doesn't interest me as much as talking about God's story, trying to talk to people that are not believers and having civil conversations. I was contacted after the William Lane Craig interview by an atheist who has his own podcast and said, I saw you wanted to interview atheists. I'd like to volunteer to be one. So I'm looking forward to maybe having my first atheist where I can debate with them, or at least probe them on how I think atheism is completely and utterly incomprehensible and does not function based on its belief system. It functions, it works, but not on atheism. It has to use theism. That's my premise, and that's what I want to discuss. Also, another thing that you have to understand is, if you listen to this on Spotify or on iTunes, it's on Life Audio, which is a Salem network. That's a big deal. They're the huge radio network. And that's where you can hear it. Well, guess what? If I get people liking and sharing it there and growing that, that has an opportunity for advertising. Another thing I'm going to have to probably do is try to find some ads, some people that want to sponsor. You've seen guys do it, and look at me in the eyes, guys. I get it. You don't want that. You want to listen and not have me suddenly say, and now you should buy these encyclopedias. I know, because I don't want to hear it either when I'm listening to somebody I want to listen to. But it's the only way you can afford to keep running this thing. You have to understand something. It's hard to do. I've done this thing for 3 years. I get all my guests. I do all the interviews. Wyatt does all the editing. Wyatt does all of the production and shots. We have to buy all the equipment. We have to do all of the stuff. I have to make sure I'm here on a Monday. I have to make sure I get something pre-recorded if I'm going to be out of town. I have to do all this work and make sure it shows up at 7 o'clock p.m. every Monday night and then gets sent to Salem Network for Life Audio Network on Tuesdays. We do it everything. I pay Wyatt for doing that because he's doing hard labor and work, and I couldn't do it without him. I pay another guy that helps run my website and so forth to help keep things running smoothly. The only only person that has never paid himself for anything that has been generated through this podcast is me. And I'm not even complaining. I'm just saying we're getting to a place where I think we could break through and get a deal where it could make enough income that I could get paid more, and I will do more things. But one of the ways we're going to do that, and I'm just letting you know now, is the Salem podcast is really short. It's like 45 minutes to 50 minutes. They're more concerned about the length of time people listen than they are how long it is. So I thought, well, all of my interviews are longer than that. So what we're going to probably start doing in the future, we're going to cut the podcast down to closer to an hour total, like you're watching for the whole thing. So it's mainly going to be the interview is going to be the main part. Maybe White and I will get a couple minutes of banter, you'll see. Maybe I'll get a little bit of a reference to some topical thing. And that'll be that, because that's what we're sending over to these guys that are audio only. But we will have the entire thing that you guys have loyally sat and watched for hours sometimes. It will be this in behind the paywall. It'll be the subscribers, so people can go get everything there. But the more people we can get watching live, watching right now, listening in, and staying on, the more it not only does it monetize, it builds the value of the podcast. It starts getting into the algorithms. More people watching, more people want it, and suddenly we become influential to some degree in trying to get the gospel out in a unique way. I've got some great guests that already have been interviewed that are coming up. Some that are some difficult ones I just did, but important ones. And so I just wanted you guys to know where we're going. We're talking about maybe getting a dedicated Facebook page just for Brad Stein Has Issues. Maybe I'll do lives there. Maybe we'll run the broadcast through that Facebook page like this, like we used to do, except for it's on its own instead of my fan page. So we have a lot of ideas of trying to move to the next generation of how we can maybe grow this podcast into something special. So, as always, thank you guys for everything you've done. You can always leave me notes. You can also always message me. I will, especially for those of you, and you know who you are, who've been loyal fans. And I will say personally, hey, here's what I'm doing, or if you want to ask me a question. And again, thank you so much for what you're doing. Thanks for your loyalty. Thank you for helping us. Keep us in your prayers. Please like, share, subscribe to the Brad Stein Has Issues YouTube channel. And let's see what God might do with this crazy little podcast called Brad Stein Has Issues that you guys built with me and Wyatt from the ground up. Folks, this next guest is a comic. And when I first started doing the podcast, I didn't have a lot of comics on. I felt like I'm a comic. I don't want to have comics. I want to have other people. But I realized comics are interesting too. And some of them have storied careers. This particular gentleman did. I remember seeing him in the 70s, but mainly in the 80s. He was everywhere. He was on films with Robin Williams. He was on television shows. He has his own, I was going to say casino. It's not a casino. His own theater in Branson, Missouri. And he was famous for choosing to come to the United States and loving the nation. Kind of the first guy to really play up the, what a country, America, and the trials and tribulations he's had to do to reinvent himself after the fall of the Iron Curtain, of all things, a wonderful thing that suddenly made him less interesting because suddenly freedom was also in the former Soviet Union. So obviously you know who I'm talking about. And if you don't, you might find this an interesting exploration of the history of stand-up comedy in the United States. And one of the guys that was part of that comic boom of the 70s moving into the 80s, and here we are in 2025. So please, folks, enjoy this interesting conversation with an icon of stand-up comedy, Yakov Smirnoff. Well, on Brad Stein Has Issues, we are always seeking to get unique and special guests. But more importantly, I've always wanted to get international guests that come from all over the world, because it's so easy to get somebody from Iowa. It's so easy. St. Louis, they are knocking at the door. Matter of fact, there's a team of St. Louisers out my door right now saying, please let us in. I said, no. I like to favor the Russians. I don't know if it's because of my Trump affiliation. I don't know what it is. But I have a very special guest, even though we've had wonderful and amazing eclectic guests on Branson Has Issues. Comics have been maybe the least of all the people I've had on, but not because I don't like them. It's my livelihood. But just because I know what comedy's like, and I enjoy other people, astrophysicists and atheists and everybody else, because I just find those stories interesting. But I do love to have comics on for one particular reason, and it's this. We have a shorthand. We have a way to talk to each other that's unlike anybody else, because there is, from what I've understood, from all the performers I've known in my life, the one thing they fear more than anything is stand-up comedy. They're saying, everyone I've ever met, and I'm talking about major musicians, how do you do stand-up comedy? They can't believe it. But we do it, and we think it's nothing. We love it. It's something that we are ready and committed our lives to learn. But for most people, it's so intimidating, they wouldn't even want to think about it. So when I'm with a fellow comic, we get it. We know what it was like to bomb. We know what it was like to do great. We know what it's like to try to figure out how to write a joke and figure it all out. So this particular guest, I'm very grateful to meet. I actually remember watching him perform before I even started as a comic, when I was still a magician. So he's iconic, and just got to meet him, but believe it or not, he's a nice guy. Didn't see that coming. So please welcome Yakov Smirnoff to Branson Has Issues.
Hi.
How do you do, brother?
Thanks so much for
Good to
having me
meet you. And you should know who he is, because you kind of created a genre, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I remember seeing comics, I'm a Mexican comedian, and they'd reference it. But they were always Americans who happened to have a lineage from Mexico, or I'm a woman or whatever, and that's fine. That's interesting.
I was doing that first.
You were doing Mexican?
No.
Oh, okay.
A woman.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, nice. Well, so you were way ahead of your time. You were way ahead of your
I
time.
was transitioning
Trans-
from the Soviet Union to America, yeah.
And whatever it took to get in. I got to be a woman. I will be happy to put F if it gets me in.
That's right.
But, the idea that you came from another country, I mean, I'm trying to think of the old school guys. I don't remember that ever being part of the milieu of comedy at the time that I remember growing up. And I would have seen comics in the 60s and 70s. The guys I remember influencing George Carlin, Steve Martin. I mean, 70s guys. And you were kind of close to that.
I was.
But mainly in the early 80s. Is that kind of when your career launched?
Yeah, I started, I came to Comedy Store in 78, but I didn't speak English. So
Perfect.
Yeah. So there was a little barrier there.
Yeah, right.
And but I was determined, because I was a comedian in the Soviet Union, which most people, it was an oxymoron. It's like Amish electrician kind of a thing. So I had to overcome that concept that I wanted to do comedy, and I had to learn the language. And little by little, Mitzi Shore, was the owner of the Comedy Store, she spotted me, even though my repertoire at that time, maybe I had 3-4 minutes of jokes that I translated from Russian to English, and she saw something special there, and she said, "Why don't you stick around? There is always place for good and difference." And I had no idea who I was talking to, and I'm like, okay, and she said, "Come see next day's show, then you'll see where you are." And I got there, and I saw first person on stage was Robin Williams, second was Billy Crystal, followed by Jay Leno, Richard Pryor. I mean, I was like, oh my goodness,
This is going to be kind of challenging.
Or if she likes them, I knew about them from television, and so I was, I'm going to stay, and I did, and that's, the rest is history.
Well, listen, we need to, I mean, I don't know how often people have sort of dug into that one particular specific, but I do want to talk about it because I love it when people who listen to my show, watch my show, and most, a lot of times they do because I'm a comic and they like me, so they like comedy.
Sure.
And they either like it because it's something they enjoy, laughter, or maybe they want to be a comic and how difficult it is. But one thing for sure is comedy, laughter is universal.
Yes.
Humor is universal. The human experience is
Yes.
universal.
Yes.
But language does not translate comedically because comedy is so much about beats and measures and timing. And if a language, you can't just make direct translations because it doesn't sound the same. Culturally, we laugh at some different things. Not always. There are some things that any place you go in the world, you can go to some village in Timbuktu, and if somebody falls down off a, we're gonna laugh. That's
so funny,
hysterical.
yeah.
Everybody loves the Stooges.
Right.
But when it comes to words and abstract ideas about what comedy is, it's very different. And some things that maybe I would laugh at as an American might be insulting to some other culture. Depends on the culture. I'm not saying that, I don't know anything about Russia, really.
No.
But how in the world were you able to take comedic ideas in a very particular language and culture, which was very oppressive at that time?
Yeah.
It's still part of communist.
Yes.
So
it was.
very controlling your speech.
Well, we had Department of Jokes that was part of Ministry of Culture.
For real?
For real.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were making a joke.
I wish I was making this
Department of Jokes.
And they would once a year censor your material, and you had to stay with the script. You could not talk about politics, government, sex, religion. The rest was fine, so you're really...
Nothing's left.
Yeah.
But still.
Well, there's fish,
Right.
there's buttons,
Right.
there's
There's
mother-in-law
borscht.
jokes. There you go.
There's
So any
turnips.
of those, but for a comedian to develop a muscle that's still in that restriction, it's like I compare it to like runners, like marathon runners run on the sand, and it makes it so much harder. And then, but they get better. So I see that was my training, and I became fairly successful in the Soviet regime. And when I came to America, that was my only question. I didn't know if I'll be able to translate that. However, I started just paying attention to what people were laughing at. I at the immigration office, the dogs were sniffing my luggage, and I said, what are they doing? And they said, they're looking for drugs. And I said, well, I heard in America people are hooked on drugs, but dogs? And they started laughing again. So I'm going, well, maybe I got this. Maybe I can figure this out.
Well, maybe that's more a representation of having a sense of humor. And I've always made it very clear to people, we use the term sense of humor simply as a definition of people that laugh at things. Oh, he's got a good sense of humor. In other words, he laughs at things. I don't think that's really what it means. I think to really have a great sense of humor means you know how to sense where something funny is, because not everybody can do that. For you to look at the dogs sniffing, which by the way could be a serious scenario. It's like if somebody finds drugs, they get in trouble, they get arrested. Right. So, and for you to see that and instantly see some sort of humorous connection that most people will just watch it happen and then let it go is why comics are comics and other people aren't. We see funny everywhere.
I think we look for funny everywhere. Whether we find it or not, that depends on how fast, like watching Robin Williams, for example, who was genius in that. It was just so fast. Some of us more, I see an opportunity for a joke or a situation that happens that I go, well, that's unusual. That's, I'll give you an example. My wife and I were in Australia and went to Tasmania, and they have kangaroos that are kind of tame. We were enjoying them, and then I saw a little animal that was laying in his enclosing, and I had the selfie stick, and instead of just zooming in and looking at that animal in close up by zooming, I decided I'm going to use my selfie stick it right under his nose, and just it was innocent thing. Well, that was Tasmanian devil.
Oh, okay.
He grabbed my phone with his teeth and broke it all the way through.
Wow.
Yeah, and then took it off my selfie stick and went put it under his butt and fell asleep. I mean, this to me it
Right.
was funny,
Right.
just because those two, like, why would you poke a Tasmanian devil? But I didn't know it was
Yeah.
Tasmanian devil. I thought it was just a nice
Right.
little creature.
Right.
Let me see what he looks
They're all
like when
worthy
he's
of
sleeping.
petting and
Yes. Well, thank God I wasn't petting him. Yeah. Yeah.
But well, so I guess that's what I would like to first explore with you then, because it does give you a different perspective than a lot of people, in that you had to take a culture and a language and turn it into a whole new world that still fit for you. So tell me about some of your challenges. First off, learning English has got to be challenging
Right.
enough, I'm guessing. Not that Russian's easy to learn. I think that's a rough language,
It was
frankly.
easy for me, but it was like
Yeah. So you picked it up pretty quick. Okay.
I was one. Come on.
So you were
How hard-
you were a
yeah.
prodigy. Let's just put it to.
How hard can it be? Right. It was not easy, but I was very determined to learn, and I kind of I decided I'm going to be a bartender, because I used to work on the Soviet cruise ships, and it sounds oxymoron there, but and I would perform in a place like in the where theater is, but the bar was right across from you. So I go, well, they're the same audience, and there I could just be talking to drunk people, and they won't know that I don't speak good English, whatever it was. And so it was clever. I didn't know if it will work.
Yeah.
But I started, I went to bartending school, speaking very little English, record every lesson. Then I had a American girlfriend who would help me translate by making those drinks and sipping and going, oh, okay, this is a good learning process.
Yeah.
With and so I got to become a bartender, and that gave me a direct connection to Americans. So they would see like my name tag, and they would say, Yakov, where are you from? And I would say, from Soviet Union. And what did you do? I was a comedian. So there would start a conversation. It's like, Soviet comedian? What are you talking about? So that kind of gave me a direct connection to Americans. And then I would try to crack a joke, but they wouldn't understand it,
Yeah.
because my English wasn't good enough. So then I would go, oh, they didn't tip me. That means that wasn't funny. So that was giving me another gauge.
Yeah.
If they would laugh, I would go, oh, okay, that joke. I would make a note. And that's how I collected, some jokes.
So when you were a comic in the Soviet Union, I mean, again, and I'm sure you've answered this a million times, but it's fresh for all of us. I mean, it does seem an oxymoron. Because you think of communism as being very restrictive,
Right.
especially about speech.
That's right.
Nothing is more crucial than shutting down people's freedom to speak as they feel,
Absolutely.
because that controls the whole person. If I can't
Absolutely.
speak, I can't think. If I can't think, I can't behave.
That's
And
right.
if I can't behave, I'm a slave.
Yeah.
And so, those of us in a free society that have never known any different,
Yeah.
I don't think it's even possible to imagine what it's like to be controlled by a certain elitist, self-appointed. Nobody voted for these people. I mean, or at least,
Right. Yeah. It's very easy.
do you even know how oppressed you are, or do you feel like this
No,
is how it works?
That's the point.
Yeah.
That was the point. There was no attempt to do anything, because you knew from your mother's milk that you're going to be punished severely. I mean, during like Stalin time, people would disappear,
Yeah.
families would disappear for telling some humorous thing or whatever. It was gone.
Yeah.
So I did not experience it personally, because my parents pretty much told me that don't say anything. Now, behind the scene, there was a huge network of friends that would tell political jokes to one another. But we would trust each other, and there was no, we knew where not to say it. But when it was brought to the Department of Jokes and they would cross out like material, you knew you don't do that.
But that makes me wonder about the human agency, the freedom of being a human, in that when what you just said to me was interesting to people, I think, in that you said, well, we had certain friends that we trusted,
Correct.
that we could joke with. But here's what has to be implied there then. Humans apparently know I'm supposed to be free. I'm supposed to be able to say what I want. I'm not supposed to have somebody rule over me, because why would you go look for people to let you say things that were off limits, supposedly? You must have known instinctively this isn't fair. Did you have access to other, let's say, Western information so you could see, oh, these people don't have to so how would you know? We should be able to make fun of these people. Yeah. How did you know that? Do you think that's instinctual, that people want to have free speech and free autonomy to make their own decisions?
If you know about it, if you look what happened during COVID, you experience a mini communism. You were given money to do nothing, to shut up, to wear a mask, and just behave the way the government tells you to behave. You experienced communism for a short period of time.
Wow.
Yeah. And so if you grow up with it and never felt it, you wouldn't even know.
Right. You're in the fishbowl going, this is how it always is.
This is the way it is.
But what I'm getting at is that, so what would make somebody want to push that envelope? Like, go find a place to, okay, isn't nobody, okay, Stalin, Khrushchev, you're making fun. So something in us as humans, I don't think it's Russian, it's human.
No,
we want to push back against tyranny. Yes or no?
Yes and no.
Okay. Perfect. That's all I needed.
For an answer? If you don't know that you're pushing against tyranny and you're just doing it to release the stress, that's a totally different thing. When you're aware of this, I'll give you an example. I was touring with a band in Ukraine early in my career. I was maybe 19 or something like that, 20. And I was being MC, Master of Ceremonies. And by the end of my tour, I was asked if I wanted to go on a cruise ship on the Black Sea for free to do Master of Ceremonies work. And I never been on a cruise ship, so it was like, sure, I'll do it, And I did it, and people enjoyed me. And then I went to the corporate office of that cruise company, which was only one. It was the Soviet-run cruise ship. And I said, they asked me, do you want to go again? And I said, I'd like to, but I haven't seen my parents for a while, so can I bring my parents with me, and then I'll do it for free? I don't. And they threw me out of the office. They said, you think you're irreplaceable? Get out of here. We have many people like you are. And I left. And it was standard for the Soviet. I spoke up to ask for something more than maybe some other people would get, and I was thrown out. So I go home, and told my parents that I attempted this, but the response was pretty much what I anticipated. So, and then we get a messenger that same day brings 2 packages of tickets for me and my parents. And that was shocking. It was like, wait, I never heard of that.
Right.
That they would like throw me away and then bring me back. It don't make sense. So I go on a cruise with my parents, and I asked cruise director, what happened? And he said, well, our ships are leased to European companies a lot. And we learned that for a cruise to be successful, we need a good cook and a good comedian. And so the captain told the powers that be that even if if they need to take his cabin to keep me on the ship, he would give it to me.
Wow.
And this is how crazy the light bulb went off. I said, wait, are you saying that if you're more talented than someone else, you will have more benefit? And he goes, yeah, that's what we learned. That's when I started going, we need to get out of the Soviet Union. And then what supported that also, having other people from Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, they would have groups of those people on the ship. And I was able to talk to their interpreters. Normally, you are not allowed to meet or talk to any foreigners. So the information was controlled by the government with TV, radio, everything was consistent. They didn't know religion, so you had no information about free speech or anything that capitalism has to offer. None. And I all of a sudden are given this channel.
Yeah.
And then
So you had a miniature version of capitalism, like you just said the other way, where you said, wait, this is another way to think about how life works. That you literally can earn status based on your skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in communism, it's kind of like they decide for you. You get to be this guy. You get to be that. Here's what you make. Don't worry about it.
Right.
And it sounds as though what they were telling you when they threw you out was, how dare you be ungrateful?
Absolutely.
You should just be grateful that we've given you anything. And they're used to having that kind of
Sounds
power.
like Trump at the White House talking to Zelensky.
Right.
Yeah, you should be just grateful. Anyway, no, you're absolutely right. And I had it was like a social experiment for me, because I watched all these different people, how they behave, how they're mentally behaving with my humor. And I would do like the dance. I would get everybody in a train kind of a dance and do the circles around. I love doing that. The orchestra is playing, and I'm, leading them, and they're following me. And then I would venture off, and I would go outside of that area, and I knew where it's going to break the chain. When the Soviet person was in that chain, they would stop. They would not leave the area where we're supposed to be. And I was daring enough. So if it was Europeans, German, they would go around the whole ship with me. But if there was a Russian in the middle or a Soviet person, they would lose that in a second. They would just break the chain.
Why?
Because they were scared to be seen with the foreigners outside of the area where they're being watched by the KGB. Every second person on the ship was the KGB informer. Every second. So if you're not, your person that you're sharing a room with or whatever, they are.
Yeah. So again, I don't think those of us who were born in freedom.
Yes, you don't.
It's the greatest heartache for me, Yakov, during Corona. Keep in mind that my career was ruined in the mainstream when I came out of the closet and said, I'm a Christian and I'm a conservative and I'm still a comic and I still can do the improvs. I can do everything you guys can do. But I'm not going to do it by tearing down my country, because I think it's a great country. I mean, what a country, huh? And I believe that. But I will say this. I don't worship the United States. I worship God, but I am grateful
Yeah.
for freedom. I'm grateful because I realized that you have to be aware of freedom because it's so fragile
Very.
that it can be taken, and there are people looking to take it at all times.
A lot of people.
And the Corona thing that broke my heart wasn't that they stole my First Amendment rights. People gave it away. That's different. It's one thing to take a bayonet and say, speak like we demand, do what we say. But if I say it's not worth anything to me, not only are you trampling on the blood of those who did sacrifice for this, but you're not defending me. What if I want to have free speech? We all got to be on one country here if this is going to matter to us, because if half of you are going to fight against me as a betrayer internally, then we can't survive. We can't survive. And that's the world you live in. I mean, didn't they teach people in the Soviet at that time, inform on your family or inform on your neighbor, and we'll probably give you some extra rutabagas or I don't know what they gave you, but right?
Well, they made it like during, it was probably in the 50s when they were running out of wheat or something. And so they start confiscating this. And then this young boy, 13 years old, Pavlik Morozov, he told on his dad that he hid a bag of wheat, and they executed his dad and made this Pavlik Morozov a national hero, and said everybody should do that. And that's how we were growing up. So it was like normal. Now, again, I grew up later after the war, and so I didn't see any like things like that, but it was ingrained in us.
Yeah.
So we just kept quiet and stayed, but let me ask you, you said Corona twice, and I'm not sure I know what that
The
is.
coronavirus.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, I'm
yeah.
going, okay, got
Yeah,
it.
no, not the beer.
Totally, COVID. Yeah, I'm going, what did I miss?
No, the coronavirus
Yes.
is what I meant.
That you experienced that was strategic. It was to destroy American spirit. That's the most valuable thing America's got. And it's so tangible. It's so easy to, you saw it 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. People would just take the money and go buy a big TV, and they would just do whatever they were told.
Well, but what is really just mind-boggling is you would have fellow Americans, right? I mean, we're all citizens of the United States, so that gives us an equal share of this freedom.
Yes.
And you had groups of Americans saying, you can't go to work unless you put that mask on. You can't fly. You shouldn't be given medical attention if you didn't take that vaccine. These are people, my people, sitting next door to me. I don't want to point to anybody because wherever they are, that betrayed us and literally, Yakov, literally were saying, die. You die if you don't do what, and I'm going, who are you? This isn't what America was built off of. And maybe it's naive to think that most people are courageous because everybody has read the story of the Emperor's New Clothes. Yes. Everybody's read it. It's a great story. Sure. And all the mob says, you're beautiful and your crown and your elegant shoes, and look at them, and he's naked. Yes. And one little boy goes, hey, he doesn't have any clothes. And we all read that and go, he was courageous. He stood alone amongst the mob. Here's the problem, Yakov. Everybody thinks they're the kid. You're not the kid. Most people aren't the kid. Rarely do you find the kid. And what we found in the virus moment was most of you have proven to yourself you're a coward. You're not the kid. You are evil, really, because you wanted to kill and harm other people. That simply didn't play the game. The game you played was this. I'm afraid I want the government to take care of me. I don't want to stand alone. I want to comply, but I want everybody else to do it too. So I don't have to be revealed as the coward I was. Because now that it's all kind of beyond us, they're all like going, oh, we didn't know. We did our best. We just tried. Oh, you mean like the Nazis that said, we were just following orders. So, but the difference between me having this conversation with you and with someone else is you lived in a country, this was real. You really died. You really vanished. You were really rubbed out of the photos. This is why it took people like you, people that came from Cuba, people that came from other parts, of the world that had communism or socialism, to say, I don't know if you guys understand this, but what we're watching, we've seen this movie before, and this doesn't end well.
It's
so it
Titanic,
took you guys.
Yeah. It's Titanic.
Yeah.
It's like there's and it's scary to me when all the political changes are happening and the things that are going on. I remember COVID was just starting, and at that time I took my wife and we went to Chicago from Branson, right? So I'm in Branson most of the time. It's a very small community, very conservative. And so we went to Chicago and we experienced this firsthand, like how people looked at you if you didn't have a mask on. In the park, they would just put the mask on and you're like, and with such hatred.
Yes.
Right? So when I came back to Branson, there was a meeting of a city hall meeting. Do we pass the mask mandate or not in Branson? So there was that opportunity. And I went to that meeting and I spoke for about 2 minutes, literally, and explained that let Branson be like that island of hope and in the ocean of hatred. And I said, maybe instead of mask, maybe we can wear like a shield, and that way you still can breathe and you can still be seen and stuff like that. And there was a couple of hundred people and they all applauded. They were all excited that I suggested that. And then I guess there were some cameras in the audience, and then it went on the internet, and I started getting hate letters or in my email, people who were friends of mine, were like for 30 years, and they would say, "You're Trump stooge. You're going to trash can of history. Just like, don't ever talk to me again. Don't ever like." And it was like such a just like Soviet Union. If you step away and you just express what you think for 2 minutes, you will be punished. You will lose relationships. You will lose your relatives, you will lose your friends.
Well, so, again, you're the one that can give us a perspective because you came from it. You saw the freedom and you breathed it in. You were so grateful.
Yes.
And then you saw people trying to chip away at that thing without understanding what was at stake, because they're always going to leverage virtue. Because of my study of the West and knowing that Christianity's ethics and morals is what inculcated the West and gave it its sense of all people are equal. That came from God. I mean, whether you believe in God or not, that's where it came from. When he said, I made people in my image. Well, no one had ever thought of that before. There was lots of gods, polytheism or whatever. So everybody kind of found their own way. But when there was a monotheistic God, the Jews got it first and said there's one guy. Well, guess what? If that's true, then that means every human being that exists, no matter what color, no matter what bone structure, no matter what height, weight, they come from the same Father, which means we're related. So we all should love each other and get along because that's my family. But it's not just words. It's real. And so when you think of it like that, it gives you an opportunity to try to find unity. But it does appear that there are people that just are either more comfortable in controlling others. That's how they want. That's power, isn't that what everybody wants is power? Or they simply don't want to. They don't want to be alone in their cowardice.
Mob mentality is very scary. Mob is going to do terrible things.
Yeah.
And hopefully we have a way to keep that balance. I mean, there's always going to be attempts to do that, but hopefully there is enough, like for example, the Bible, when it started in the 90s, when the Iron Curtain lifted, the Bible is what took down the Soviet Union.
Really?
100%.
Explain that.
Well, because there was another source of authority that people didn't have. So the Stalin and Lenin, they took down churches first.
Yeah.
They destroyed all the.
But that's what Marx hated the most was religion.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because it was an opposition to
The state must be worshipped, not anything.
Correct.
Yeah.
And anybody who is against that or offers a different opinion have to be jailed. So what they would do, they would destroy churches. And how they would do it, they would get the mob to come and put like the ropes, big ropes on the crosses on top of the churches. And they would have two groups pulling on each side, and everybody was watching this, and then they would see the cross collapse eventually, and then they would make it a storage places. So there was no. So when you're growing up with this, and you pass the church that looks different than other buildings, you go, what is that? And your parents are saying, you don't need to know.
Yeah.
You don't need to know. You go to school, and if you say God, they'll expel you or they'll send you home. I mean, stuff that goes in so deep. And all that is a competition that they didn't want to have.
But Russia, I guess, has a long history, though, of Christianity. It's not like that didn't exist there for quite some time. So I would think that there might have been some lineage of Russians or Soviets or whatever they were called at that time that tried to pass that on a little bit. Maybe they had to go underground. Maybe they had to do it differently. But they remembered there was another thing to worship that was more important than this.
Absolutely. There was. But it was probably for about, I'd say, 40 years before, maybe 50, when it was like you see a grandma for Easter going to church. And they would be one, like in a city of 1 million people, there would be maybe one church.
Which was still controlled by the state, if I'm
Very
not
much,
mistaken.
yeah, very much. So, but they would let little old ladies go there, right? But they would, like my wife is from Ukraine, and her grandmother was baptized her very quietly somewhere, So you're right, there was that, but it was so suppressed,
Right.
that people just accepted that and said, "This is the reality. This has survived."
Well, one of the things I love to do with comics is have these kind of conversations. People normally assume all we do is joke around about things, and we do. Comics love to joke around, but I think what people miss sometimes is, to me, the greatest service comedy can do is expose the flaws, the hypocrisy, the lies, the evil, there are different types of comics, right? There are those who are just people you knew and you grew up with that were more about let's just make everybody Brian Regan I'm thinking of, or maybe Seinfeld or Gaffigan or now Nate Bargatze.
Yes.
They're just fun for everybody, and it's a wonderful style of comedy.
Yes.
Everybody can have a fun.
Yes.
I'm guessing it's more kind of your style, even though
Very
you did
much
have a
so.
kind of a political bent. You couldn't help it.
At that time, in the 80s, that was when I look back at my tapes or videos from those days. Yes, that was what put me on the map because,
But the Cold War sort of was there. The Iron Curtain was still kind of there. Reagan was coming
Very
into
much
place.
so, very
So
much
it
so.
was topical. It was what was happening.
Very much so. And I was kind of like a joke supplier to Reagan.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You would write for him?
I would write for him.
That's great.
They would call me and say, do you mind like looking at the speech before he does it in Moscow? And so,
Nice.
yeah, so I did those things. But then when the Soviet Union collapsed, that was no longer needed. So I kind of was dismissed, and all of my contracts in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, Reno, Tahoe, none of them were renewed. So I ended up in Branson, Missouri, because they did not know that the Soviet Union collapsed, and they still don't.
Right.
And I'm not planning on telling them.
That's right. Amen. Well, I guess,
But here's to your point. Branson embraced me because I met the needs of that community. I was clean, I was patriotic, I was family friendly, and they said, we don't care about the Soviet Union. So gave me 32 years of very successful, have a 2,000 seat theater. I entertained over 6 million people there. So I'm very grateful to Branson. For having this. And the reason I'm out now here in Nashville, because I believe that this pendulum of clean comedy is swinging, and Nate Bargatze is like leading the way. Such an inspiration for me, because I go, well, I used to do that in the 80s, but since I kind of got burned too, because my political jokes were not needed anymore, right?
Well,
so you have that. So then I went for a divorce, and I found another Cold War in the bedroom versus in the boardroom, and I realized.
And it doesn't get colder than that.
Never. It just stays. And it's job security. So for the last 25 years, I got my master's degree at the University of Pennsylvania in psychology because I wanted to research laughter.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I got my doctorate degree at Pepperdine University.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Doctor?
Dr.
Dr. Smirnoff?
That's right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Folks, I should have. Dr. Yakov Smirnoff. Forget the comedy. He can actually diagnose you now. Why is your marriage failing? You didn't go to his show.
There you go. And I love your routine about the boy bike and the girl bike. Beautiful, smart, because you're explaining something obvious, but the way that people can relate to and not be offended.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with this, is that I don't want to ever be an elitist when it comes to what style of comedy is superior, because I don't think it is. I've never believed in comedy competitions, for example, because it's subjective.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I've heard, and I know you've heard this, because anybody that's in the arts, if people don't like you,
Yes.
and that's fine. Matter of fact, I'm grateful there's people that don't like me, and I'll tell you why. If everybody likes me, I'm not saying anything worth listening to, because I'm vanilla. I have nothing that has something where I'm causing you to have to think. I'm not saying anything that makes you have to be uncomfortable. I'm not saying anything that might have to have you reevaluate the way you've seen your life. And you don't have to agree with it. But are you able to believe in something and stand for it? Are you able to have conversations in disagreement civilly and still be able to sort of hang on to it? Because if your belief system cannot withstand intellectual scrutiny, maybe you should abandon it. Maybe there's a truth you haven't found yet. And I think that comedy can be amazing in that the humor breaks down your prejudices.
Yeah, in defense.
And
yes.
suddenly you hear something you've never listened to before. Because if there's one thing for sure in America that we've discovered that is not good, is that people consider someone who disagrees with them an enemy, instead of someone that needs to be engaged in, and at least we can explore together. And then if we disagree at the end, we agree to disagree agreeably. And that isn't happening. You're the enemy, you're evil, you're Nazi, you're totalitarian, you're hateful. And those words, whoever controls the words controls the people. And no one do I have to explain that to.
Yeah.
And someone like you, controlling the words and the language or redefining it is a way to control people, because suddenly it's like, did you ever believe in 2025 you could look at a human being and go, do you know what a woman is? And they go, no. How is that possible?
You had a bicycle.
But my point is simply this. The comics that I think have stood the test of time,
Yes.
Lenny Bruce,
Yes.
Mort Saul,
Yeah.
Richard
George,
Pryor, George Carlin, nowadays maybe Dave Chappelle. These are people that are very funny, but they had something to say that maybe caused you to have to think deeper or differently about, you say. I think they're more important comics, not better, not funnier, but I think they're more important because they leave us with something that might change our lives as opposed to just laughter. And nothing wrong with that, obviously. Does that make sense, or do you think I'm overstating the case a little bit?
I would probably push against that in the way that, especially being a comedian in the Soviet Union, I had to be liked pretty much by everybody. I had to be, right? That was my choice, to be able to be successful.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Nate Bargatze, or you look at Jerry Seinfeld, you could, very few people don't like them.
Right.
So, but yet they still make a statement. They still do. So if you look at the Seinfeld show, that is still rerun like over and over and over again. What I think they were giving a clever approach to take topics that maybe was taboo on national television.
For sure.
But presented the way that, so similar thing that my job in the Soviet Union was to pass the jokes by the censors, but yet have a second meaning that an average intelligent person will catch.
But you did have an agenda. You did have something you wanted to say, even if you had to be more creative and subtle and nuanced in how you got away with it.
But the standard was, you don't bluntly say something, but you say it that the person that you want to reach still gets it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it kind of has, it's a mask. Dave Chappelle is straight on, you know, and funny, right? Richard Pryor, straight on and funny. Seinfeld is funny and not straight on.
Yeah.
It just, have you ever noticed?
Right. Well, but like I said, and I hope people heard what I was prefacing it with. Not superior, not saying that those guys aren't great. And you were in a scenario where you had no option. Well, it's like somebody saying you have to be clean, let's say. You could say, are you censoring me? Or are you just saying, no, if you don't want to work here, you don't have to. But if you do, here's the criteria we're asking you to do in Branson.
Not just, Branson censors the whole. I remember when they
But it's self-censored. In other words, people aren't going to come to your show if you're cussing.
Eventually,
so you're going to weed them out on your own. That's freeway as opposed to a forced.
Free market economy.
That's right.
That says we're not buying your tickets, period. But I had to be like, let's say I was always clean, like in Vegas or Atlantic City.
Why?
Because that's who I am. I mean, that's how I grew up, and
So they,
To
your
me,
parents were more like, yeah, we don't use a certain language, or they were more.
it was not an option there. It
Okay.
wasn't. So I embraced that, and I couldn't even understand why would somebody use that in the beginning. Like when I came to America, I was like, really, they can cuss or they can say something dirty?
As a comic,
Yeah.
this will be interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you find it off-putting? And I know you appreciate all the comedy,
Yeah,
whether they're
yeah.
cursing or not. We,
Yeah.
as comics, can say, I don't do it like that, but you're great.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
wouldn't. But what is it about cursing to you personally that you feel isn't the most effective or the most, I don't even know what the word would be, but why do you consider that less, I don't know, a less pure way to do comedy? Just as, do you think it's
Yeah.
just a subjective opinion, or do you think there's something about the art of writing clean? We all know it's harder.
Right. Right.
So is there some, do you think there's
I
a
think
technique to
it's-
it that you find more interesting,
I
or is it
think
a morals
I
sort
think
of
it's,
stance?
I think it's both. When I was in the 80s, going on national television, that was not an option. So you knew if you want to get in the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, you have to be clean, and so other shows you have to be clean. So it wasn't an option. And then it became an option with HBO, the Young Comedian Special, when, Andrew Dice Clay was my roommate. And he used to work very clean, doing impressions of John Travolta and Sylvester Stallone. He was great. And then HBO gave him an opportunity, and he did the nursery rhymes that were not clean, and the crowd fell in love with it.
Now, was that a character he created in the set, and then he realized, oh, I'm just going to expand that, or
Yeah,
did he
yes.
literally switch to a whole new style out of whole cloth, or was it part of like, here's Elvis, here's Stallone, oh, here's a funny guy,
Dice.
Andrew Dice Clay,
Yeah, yeah, it started that way. Yes,
because
it
that's
did.
how Larry the Cable Guy was a
Correct.
straight
It
stand-up, and he
started-
created this character and realized, hey, this is getting more traction. I'm going this direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And so all of a sudden, we're still doing like clubs dates, and he's doing Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
So he's figured something out.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's addicting, that opportunity. I didn't have that. And so to me, it was like, no, I'm going to stay with what I know. And at that time, Mitzi Shore was very encouraging of clean comedy. And yet, Robin Williams could cuss, but, Billy Crystal wouldn't,
So Mitzi did like it to be clean? I didn't
very
know
much
that.
so, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
She would say, if you want to grow in television, you need to be clean. So that's how, and I got it. So in some ways, my brain is still programmed by that department of jokes. By like, this is what you do so you don't get in trouble. And I never developed the desire to say something dirty. It never did. So
Yeah.
it never served me.
Yeah.
So I just kind of went, okay, this is me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm watching this Nate Bargatze just like on that pendulum, it's like going, whoa.
But he showed something to people who didn't know any different. I mean, you were doing it longer than me, but I started up professionally in '88. So I don't know, maybe 10 years later than you,
yeah.
but long enough to have known the guys you came up with that I emulated, because
Sure.
anybody that goes before you, you try to learn from them.
Absolutely.
And then I came up with a different group of folks. But it was funny, Yakov, because if you did the club scene, I think you did. You know how you'd be in a condo with somebody,
Yeah.
all those
Yeah.
days. Okay, so I would have conversation. We'd sit and talk afterwards, because the biggest problem with comedy is it's boring. You got 23 hours to do nothing to get on stage for 1 hour,
Right.
and so you'll sit and talk or do things together.
Sure.
But I had numerous times comics come up to me as we're trying to say, yeah, I've always wanted to do it clean. I've been thinking about doing it clean. I was a headliner, and people don't know this, but there's like a decorum, unwritten laws that the headliner, for example, can go to a guy and say, "Hey, I noticed you're doing an airplane bit. I do an airplane bit. You have to drop that." Like you could kind of make the rules because you're the closing guy.
Yeah.
I never did that because I felt like if I can't follow you,
Right.
I don't care if you're doing airplane. I'm going to do my airplane joke and wait till you get a load of this. So to me, it was a challenge. I never wanted to censor a guy's career. He's trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But, and I never said be clean.
Yeah.
Dirty guys will say, "I won't hear any F words because I'm using them." I mean, they really wanted to keep.
I didn't know
Oh
that.
yeah, they would. The dirtiest guys would say, "Save that for me," because it gets such a punch when you're going F and this and that. It's so huge. It's like don't don't burn that bridge. That's mine. It's funny that they would do
I
that.
saw a poster and I thought it was a joke. That in the club, one club, they had a poster, "Save the F word for the headliner."
That's right.
And I thought, well, that's
Because it's
funny.
the ultimate punchline for those guys. And so it kind of takes some of the sting out of it if somebody else is already using it. But I always thought to myself, I never went to them and said, "Clean it up," ever. And so I thought to myself, why are they even saying this?
Yeah.
It'd be one thing if I said, "I don't like your act," or whatever. I know, just like you do. That's what I said when we started this. I said we have a shorthand. I don't have to explain to a comic that it's much harder to write clean than dirty.
Yeah.
I don't have to explain that.
Yes.
We all know it's true.
Yes.
It's why Seinfeld did it. He actually said in an interview, I like the way he described it. He said, "I thought being clean made for a more interesting game." I thought that was an interesting way to say it. Because for me, if I talk about having sex with somebody and using graphic language and this and that, and I'll get laughs, let's say. I've never done that. I'm just saying if I did, I'll get laughs. That's one thing. Just to get a laugh isn't that complicated. But if I can make you laugh just as hard by talking about a bike,
Right.
to me as an artist,
Yeah.
that was harder. That was more
rewarding, more
interesting, more rewarding,
yeah.
more creative.
Yeah.
It made me have to be more, work harder. How can I do this? I don't get to say F to get the laugh.
Yeah.
So what if I'm louder here? What if I'm more dynamic? So I had to fill in all the F words with the style of I did. I had to be more energetic. I had to find other ways to make up for these guys.
Very much so,
And that's part of adjusting.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I didn't want people to think, just to kind of go back to that I'm in any way saying that other comics that don't get more
we're not
political
saying that.
are less than. I'm just saying maybe what I'm really should have said was I feel like when comedy can really be interesting and important is if it does use its ability to bring laughter to say something harder that people don't want to hear but need to. I think that can be a very good cultural impact that a comic can do that maybe somebody else can't get away. Maybe musicians try to make a political statement or whatever in some of their songs. But I just wonder if comedy can offer a service. We're the ones that don't get our heads cut off when we make fun of the king, right? Wasn't that our job, back in the day? Well, let's, quickly as we're getting towards the end of this, I want to use kind of your experiences and talk about them because they're very unique, and I would love for people to hear about it. Some of you listening out there, including my son, who's the producer, he doesn't know Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Why would he? He's 20-something years old. Johnny's been gone since 92. He has no idea. He doesn't grow up on TV. He's on his phone. But I grew up with, if you got on the Tonight Show, you did it. Was the brass ring. It was very difficult. Jim McCauley was the booker at that time. I don't know if he was the guy that you had. Very difficult to get on the Tonight Show. And not only was he looking for comics that would fit, but he almost had to decide, is Johnny going to like this guy? Like he had to know his taste, which was interesting. But you did it.
I did it.
You got on it with Johnny.
I did
So tell me about seven.
7 times.
Good for you. So tell us what that must have felt like.
Well,
to get on that
it's
show.
Interesting that you know Jim McCauley, and so Jim, I thought I should be on the Tonight Show fairly. Like when I came, my English wasn't very good and stuff, but I still felt I'm Russian comedian, whatever.
Novelty,
right? And Jim McCauley would come to the Comedy Store, and I would showcase like once a year
for him specifically.
and he would say, Johnny's not going to like you. I'm sorry. 6 years in a row. And I literally, last time he went to see me there, he said, look, let's just save each other's time. You get on that show when hell freezes over.
Wow.
So I start watching Weather Channel. I'm like going,
I'm going to be a meteorologist.
I'm going to try. So, and then I kind of let it go. I let it go. And my career, I did night court a couple of times. Then I got commercials.
As an actor, yeah.
Yeah. And then a commercial, Miller Lite commercial. The commercial was, in America, you can always find a party. In Russia, party always finds you. Right. And I get a phone call. I was in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina. And
Charlie Goodnights?
Yeah. and I was, I
great
got
club.
at that time, no cell phone. So they send a message for Yakov to call Mitzi. So I called her, and she goes, guess who called? Macaulay. He's such an, but, yeah. And she goes, he wants you to get on Johnny saw you on the commercial, likes you, wants you on the show. So I wanted to say,
yeah. What's the weather out like?
Right, exactly. But I quickly said, yes, sure. And then I had to still deal with Macaulay. And I said, I'd like to do my show on night before Thanksgiving. And he goes, you're not going to tell me when to put you on. I go, well, I would like to, because I believe that I have a lot to be thankful for, and I want America to know this.
Wow.
And so he agreed, and I did the set, and I finished this show, and Johnny called me over.
Wow.
Which was like a big deal.
Huge, rare.
Very rare. And I sat down and I said, Johnny, I love America because you have things we never had in Russia, like policemen have warning shots. And Johnny almost fell off the chair. Literally, he was laughing so hard. And we go to commercial break, and Macaulay comes over, and he sits between me and Johnny, and he goes, can you do another set like this, like a couple of months from now? I said, start watching Weather Channel.
You're acting, kid.
What?
It's my turn. Touche. Well, that's what I love about comics, is that, we are a special breed, and
resilience,
and we take no for an we don't take no for an answer. We are going to overcome. It might be, and I've never considered it this personally, but it's just from my observation. It might be the hardest performing art. There's something about stand-up comedy that people fear. Yeah. Of course, if you're in a band, you have others around you, so you're not like responsible for the whole thing. I mean, the lead singer has to sing it properly. Right. But nevertheless, you have other people to play with. If you're in a film, there's other actors, other scenes. But director, a comic is all alone, and if you're not getting it, you got nowhere to go.
That's it.
I can't hide, can't pretend. I'm hired for 45 minutes. I've done 4. Yeah. I got 40 minutes of people hating me, and I don't get to leave so I can get my check. So it's some unique type of art, and I think people, I guess, respect it because they know how that you're on a tightrope and there's never a net.
That's it.
So
I felt that actually last night.
Okay.
I was telling my wife, I said, I'm flying to Nashville, and I feel I'm walking on a rope. I know it sounds strange because I've been doing this for so long. And, people recognize me and they go, wow, you're a legend, whatever. And but every gig is a new gig. Every moment is
But that's what makes it
Yeah.
fun for us, that we never can take it for granted. Anytime. This is what I learned. I did a show in New York years ago. I was doing some guest spots, and Seinfeld came in, and he was doing a spot, and he bombed. Now it was like catch maybe, and it was probably a Tuesday, and maybe there was 12 people. Nobody could do, it's impossible.
right.
But you're just working out. You don't care. You're just trying to get a rhythm for it and see if it's working. But he bombed, and I remember thinking, if I ever met him, I'd tell him this. It was one of the greatest things I ever saw in my life because it taught me something.
Yeah.
Okay, nobody's immune.
Right, right.
This is so hard.
Yeah.
You can be Jerry Seinfeld and bomb because it's such a difficult thing. So when I'm bombing, I can go, it's all right.
I'm just like Jerry.
I'm just like Jerry. I've reached the epitome of it. Any interesting stories about working with Robin Williams, Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, Jack Nicholson? I mean, you got to be in films with some of the greatest actors.
Yeah. One of the stories that Robin was starring at movie Moscow on Hudson, and I just got to pretty much been maybe in the Comedy Store scene for maybe a year, and so he brought Paul Mazursky, who was the director and the writer and the producer of Moscow on Hudson. So he hired me, and I had the scene with Robin, and when I got to New York to do the movie, I said to Robin, why don't we punch up the scene, because I think it could be funnier. And Robin was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So we spent an hour or so kind of bouncing ideas, and then next morning, 7 a.m., we're on the set. Paul Mazursky goes, okay, before the cameras roll, let me hear what you guys got. And so Robin and I both are like doing our thing that we created. And we stopped, and he goes, we're like standing there like two little kids going,
Yeah, ta-da!
Dad, what do you think? Dad, what do you think?
Yeah.
And he goes, let me get this straight. You changed my script. And we go, yeah, we did. He goes, I'll give you 5 minutes to put it back the way it was, or both of you are fired. And
Now, was he the
wasn't
director
kidding.
or the writer?
He was the writer, director,
Oh,
producer.
okay. Oh, well, then
the
he
whole
had the
thing.
checkbook. He could say whatever he wanted.
And he made a deal with Robin that Robin forgot to tell me, that he was told not to improvise or do anything different, because on Mork and
He
Mindy,
told Robin Williams
not to
not to improvise.
He did, but he had the checkbook, and Robin was like, okay, hey, let's just do it. Well, we put that back in less than 5 minutes, and that was the end of it. But that was a real, thing. We had to, obey by the rules.
But what was it like improvising with Robin Williams?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, he's amazing, I mean, it's just, he's brilliant. He was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was, and deep and introspective and amazing conversationalist when he was off camera.
That was the thing about Robin. I never met him, but when I would see him in any show he was ever on, he was on.
Yes.
And I always remember, obviously brilliant. We all knew that.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking to myself, I wish I knew who he was. I would, because he never showed himself, at least there. So you got to see a real guy, wasn't trying to joke with you, wasn't trying to be funny. I mean, what did you see? Did you see what kind of a human was he?
Depth, incredible depth, curiosity about, like, he wanted to
Humble?
talk about. Very humble, very humble. It was just like, turn off the cameras off, and he was like normal. I think you see him like in movies more, who he was in the movies.
Dramatic ones, like the
When he was
famous.
psychologist.
Yeah.
When he got the Oscar.
Yeah.
For being so deep in respect.
You feel like that was him, though? I mean, that's the guy you knew off camera?
Big time, yes.
And more
Yeah, very
introspective.
much
Don't
so.
you think comics are a lot smarter and introspective in than most people have any idea. Don't you think we? No, really though. Haven't you? I mean, obviously, it sounds self.
No, because there are studies, and I was studying this to get my doctorate degree. You have that social intelligence there that is people who are on the top of their game in any business, not just comedians, but every person who achieved CEOs of the companies they normally have a great sense of humor that it's been measured very much so that the level of the IQ and intelligence of that person. So they develop the humor is like the highest level. I remember
Highest level of what?
intelligence.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. They when
So you're saying people that have a higher heightened sense of humor, like we were talking about earlier, correlates with an IQ factor? Like,
Correct.
really?
Correct.
I wonder
Yeah.
what would that even? How would that correlate?
Well, here I'll give you an example. I was doing a show one time for a convention of people who develop software for in artificial intelligence. That was about 10 years ago or so. And they said, when we get the artificial intelligence to be able to make jokes and create laughter, we reach the pinnacle of artificial intelligence.
But see, this is like full circle because when we first started talking, I talked about trying to translate from language from one joke to another, culture from one. There's something about humor that I don't know if we ever really have figured it out. I mean, I suppose in the academic field that you were in, they tried to make things data specific and they try to see certain, patterns perhaps, but it's got to be beyond that. It has to go. To me, the transcend. I'm a Christian, so I'm a God follower. But to me, God, the idea that there is this joy that comes from laughter. There's this other thing that animals don't experience, right? There's something almost spiritual about humor because what is it? You're going ha ha ha. What is that? What does that even mean?
Let me give you a quick kind of synopsis of my dissertation.
And he's a doctor, so you have to listen to him.
My dissertation is called Law of Laughter, LOL. Okay, so the 190 pages of no jokes, all this straight research, right? What people don't, they confuse a lot of times laughter with humor, with comedy, with giggles, with whatever. They're very different entities, very different. So I compare it to make it easier. I compare it to a structure of a joke. So the joke has two elements. It has setup and punchline. Every joke, right? Setup, that's where my research was. What is that? Because punchline is the sense of humor. And I didn't really research. I don't know if you can research sense of humor. Everybody's got their own different, unique, just like we have fingerprints. It's very unique. And we might be in groups, like some like this kind of humor, some kind like this kind. But my focus was, why do we have laughter? Because laughter is a result of setup, punchline. What is that setup? And setup is meeting the needs of the person that you are with. Whether it's your wife, your children, your employers, employees, parents, anybody. If you can meet their needs, that means you set it up so well that the humor can trigger the laughter. If the setup is wrong, I'll give people example. Like if you say the punchline. Carson used to do that. Karnak, the Magnificent, you remember that? So he would tell a punchline. It wasn't funny, right? That's sense of humor. That is sense of humor. And if you remember, Ed McMahon would repeat the punchline 2 or 3 times before Carson would reveal the setup, right?
Yeah.
So if the setup is meet Patty, it's not funny. But if you say, how does the hamburger introduce his girlfriend? Meet Patty, right? Then it's funny.
But
right?
it's backward. It's interesting because it's like they flip the
They
formula.
They used to flip it
Yeah.
for that purpose.
No, I know, but it's just interesting that it shows that there is some kind of
Formula,
pattern
yes,
that we
very much
we
so.
recognize.
If you hear laughter, if you were to watch this 20 seconds prior, like rewind that tape, you will see that if you laugh, that means that there was a setup and punchline. There was needs being met for that particular person, for that particular thing, and then the humor triggers the laughter. So and it's not easy to accept this way because it's so different, but it took me a long time to figure this out. You have no control over humor. Like you and I as comedians, we do, because that's what we do for a living. But an average person can't plan somebody slip on a banana or hit somebody somehow, or whatever humor comes, or fall down somewhere. You don't stage that. It just happens. But laugh will not happen if you don't set it up.
Well, there's two things about that. One is there does seem to be this recognition of humans having something that is crosses culture. I think Germans call it Schadenfreude. We find pleasure in laughing at other people's misfortune. Automatically, that's what slapstick is. I mean, it's one of the oldest form of it. Literally, a slapstick was two boards that would make a sound like a Punch and Judy. But that was all violence. It was violence. So that's a type of humor for whatever reason we think it's funny. Because I guess because it didn't happen to me. I don't want to fall in a hole, but if you do, that's hysterical.
Hilarious.
But I think that the thing that I am curious about was you said I met a need.
Yes.
And so if a setup is a need, and let's just take the joke you just referenced of mine, just so I can try to follow.
Yeah.
I said, when I was growing up, we used to have a thing called a boy's bike.
Yes.
And a girl's bike. And I guess everybody can say that's true.
Yes.
So they relate.
Perfect example.
And so, but the need is, this is what I want to define.
Yes.
Because a need sounds like it's something deeper psychologically.
Yes.
I need a fulfillment, a completeness. But all I'm really doing is establishing a fact that I can relate to and connect to. So are you saying that the need can simply be, you've had this happen, right? Yes, I have. Now we're connecting because we have something in common?
I think you're deeper. You're going deeper with that joke than you think, or maybe you know. You're saying men and women are different.
Right.
Right?
So that's the need,
the
maybe.
society says, no, we're not.
Okay.
And you are using your humor by
To expose an
setting up-
incongruity.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the reason
See why we need doctors?
Ah,
You never knew why you were laughing all this time, but he's broken it down.
well, but here's the best thing that you could share with your audience. You have no control over humor unless you're a professional comedian and you design the punchline, right? You don't need it in real life. All you need is if you have control over what is the need of a bread for me to take a Uber to come here, spend half an hour getting here to have this wonderful conversation. I met your need, right? And therefore, humor can happen any moment. Any moment. You say something funny. I said, it doesn't matter. Humor is separate. It's if I didn't show up,
I see.
there would be no humor. So
Okay.
the same thing happens in the relationship. That's where I got my, why is there people laughing in the beginning of the relationship a lot? And I ask audiences and they all clap. Yeah, we all remember that. And then if there's divorce, the only people laughing are the attorneys.
Yeah.
Right? Why? because we were meeting. Humor didn't change. My humor was the same as my ex-wife's, but nothing changed. What changed? We stopped meeting each other's needs.
Wow. So it's psychologically
Yes.
deep. I mean, and is it is
Universal.
humor a need for humans? Do we need humor as humans to give us
We
something?
need laughter.
Yeah.
Humor, if that's what triggers the laugh, because there's a very specific formula. It's you don't need humor to live. You don't. In the Soviet
Right.
Union,
Right.
nobody was smiling. People, right? So obviously, and they survive, right? So that wasn't the need. And so the reason I was successful in the 80s, and that just happened. I just learned that maybe a year ago. Somebody came over to me after a workshop or seminar, and he said he was in his 50s, and he was like tears in his eyes, and he said, "Thank you for what you've done for us." And I go, "What did I do?" I didn't know what he's talking. And he said, "You made us see Russians as human beings."
Wow. Was he Russian?
No,
Okay.
American. He said, "We used to hide under desks, waiting for the Russians to, and then we saw you, and you made us laugh. And I translated that, what he was saying. I met America's need to make Russians to look like human beings. And that's why America gave me all of this movies and television and stuff that I got, because I met their need."
And do you take that responsibility on yourself? I mean, do you feel like,
I didn't
in retrospect, though, of
Yeah.
your life and your
Yeah.
career, do you feel like you were able to give something back to America that you
Very
think was...
much so. I mean, Mitzi used to tell me, and I couldn't believe that. She was going, "You and Reagan changed the world." And I go, "Come on, Mitzi, I'm just a comedian."
Yeah.
I could not see it until I went through all of this educational process. I'm going, I was meeting the need. And the only reason I believe that what's happening right now with the clean comedy,
Yeah.
because there's a need. If there was no need, Nate would be still doing clubs,
Right.
and still doing some TV, whatever, but there's a need.
Yes.
And so he saw it, whether he understood it the way I'm explaining it, doesn't matter. The point is he's doing that.
Well, and the thing about Nate, since we brought him up, I've had his father on my show,
Yeah.
Stephen, if you know. I don't know if you know
I didn't
all of
meet
them.
him, but I
Okay, but he was a magician. I was a magician before as a comic,
Uh-huh.
many, many, many years ago. So I have that in common
Yeah.
with magicians. I
Yeah.
can meet them and have these kind of
Sure,
conversations,
sure.
talking about sleight of hand. But they were Christians. I mean, very committed to it. And he would set parameters for his son. You don't get to watch this movie. You don't get to do this, have this language or whatever. Similar to what you had. Your parents set a particular boundary. Here's how we do it. Whether they do it or not, we do it this way. But what I love about it is he was true to himself.
Yes.
This matters to me, and
Yes.
I believe I can share my point of view with you in a way that you will receive it and realize there's something pure about this way of laughing that I think you're going to find even more refreshing
Yes.
than if I have to use language.
I'm going to be tested tonight. I'm going to do, honestly, I'm doing a show. I was asked this morning to do a podcast called Story Wars.
Oh,
Yeah. And so I watched it last night, and I was like, I wasn't sure, should I do it or should I not? Because a lot of language there.
but that's all you hear in comedy anymore is the language.
Well,
so
but
we're
I'm
kind of
taking
stuck.
it as a challenge
Yeah.
to be, because Dusty Slay was on it last night. He stayed clean,
yeah.
even though everybody else was, So I'm going to.
And you're battling each other, or you're just
I think
giving...
it's a story. I don't even know. I think it's each person. I don't have the rules down yet, but I will before the end of the day. That you come up with the story, and there's 3 contestants, and you need to decide which one story, and they disguise it, right?
Okay.
So it's kind of an interesting concept.
It
and
is. Like Liar's Club.
kind of.
Remember
but-
that, where you had everybody looked at something and somebody would lie about what the item is, and the other
Yes,
guy
I
would say
remember that.
he would say the real thing,
That's
and you had
right.
to, which one is.
That's right.
But that's the
right.
creativity that comics can do. So
Yeah, so
I mean,
I'm going to test it. I'm a
you'll
little
be-
bit nervous about this.
I'm
but
glad,
it
'cause that'll keep you on your
introduces-
toes, yeah.
It keeps me, it's like coming to you. It's introduced me to one audience, and
Yes.
that will be a different audience.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that, my goal is to say to people, look, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
I'm in a good shape.
Right.
I've been in Branson bubble, which is like witness protection program, and I'm ready to come out and do clean shows around the country. That's my goal for coming here.
And you should, because you do have a great pedigree of what you've accomplished. You are iconic. I mean, you've established a particular style that I'm sure others have leveraged. I came from here. You kind of started that thing, and you did it out of a pure desire just to be this comic, and you were helpful in ways that people probably couldn't have anticipated, including yourself, and that that you love freedom. It's not an act. It's not a shtick. You really say, and I think that has to have been a factor in your success. It was authentic. You weren't playing a routine to. I'm sure there's people that fake their heritage or whatever.
Right.
This is who I really am.
Yeah.
This is what I've really done. I loved this nation when I got here, and I'm grateful that it gave me a chance to do things that I couldn't have imagined when I was 20 years old. Making Singapore slings on a cruise ship, where the KGB was making sure I wasn't quoting some great Russian leader. Well, folks, I got to say that it's been a great pleasure to meet Yakov. As I said earlier, when I kind of lost my mainstream career, when I came out and said, I'm going to talk comedy as a conservative man, as a Christian man, as a patriotic man, and I did it a long time ago, and really started fighting against political correctness and wokeism in the Frankfurt School. I mean, I really did the deep dive to understand what was really at stake here, which I don't have to explain to you because it came out of your system as well. Yep. But it cost me freedom. I lost my Tonight Show opportunity. All those things were never going to happen when I came out. But I also said to myself, I'll bet there's other Americans like me who grew up blue collar, loved their country, loved God, loved everything, and don't need to curse and can still do comedy. I'll bet you there's others who would appreciate what I did. And I found them. Yeah. I found those guys. And many of them are in Branson. And the one need that was never met, and you may not know this, he has his own theater in Branson. It's very successful, and people come in buses to come see him. And the only thing that theater has managed to avoid is booking me. So that tells me that even a little Soviet Union overspray, they're saying, we don't want the conservative Christian. We already got the conservative here. So even now, I'm being pushed aside, even though I blazed the trail. But it's okay because I'm grateful you're out there doing that work. He's working with a good friend of mine, Mark Gunger, doing some events for, I think, for couples. Relationships and couples. You keep your eyes, go to his website, Yakov, see where he's working, see what he's in. Seriously, folks, especially for those who are fans of mine. You want clean comedy. You want good quality stuff. You got to go see him as he reintroduces himself out on tour. Go put your money where your mouth is. The best protest you can do is not getting a sign up and saying, I hate something. It's taking money out of your wallet and investing in something you believe in, because I promise you, as a capitalist, if people see there's money to be made in a product, they will keep putting it out there. True. And he can make himself available and show you what good quality comedy to do. Well, I'm going to ask you one last question. It's for my subscribers, and it's different than maybe I would have ever done, but you fit the category. And that's your camera. I'm going to have you do something, if you don't mind. I want you to look in that camera for a second, whether it's 5 seconds, 2 minutes, your call. But I want you to tell America, this many years down the road in your life, what you've seen, and especially with what we saw with the COVID and the lockdowns, and now we have socialists and Marxists in university campuses trying to tell us that this nation is evil and racist and bigoted and terrible. Meanwhile, people are dying to get here.
Right.
But I want you to, in your own words, in your own way, tell Americans why this nation matters and why it needs to remain free.
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
Hey guys, I'm interrupting my own interview. If you want the answer that you haven't heard yet, go to bradstein.com and join one of the 3 tiers. It is the militia of the mind, it is the warrior level, or it is the special forces. And then you'll get all kinds of special content and bonus answers to make you smarter than you could ever imagine. Go there now, jump on and join the mighty 10,000. Well, folks, there it is. You can be born here and take it for granted. But I promise you, all of the wokies out there who have decided this nation is evil, it would be very simple. Let's make it a rule. You have to spend 1 year in North Korea. You get to spend 1 year.
A week.
Yes, a
would be
week. There
enough.
you go. That's
A
right.
week.
Or to, I don't know, to most Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah.
And try to wear your cross in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And see what it's like, folks. Yeah, it matters. It matters how you see the world, how you choose to live, what you believe is true, what you believe is sacred, what you believe is important to hang on to. I said this before, I'll say it forever. I do not worship the United States of America. I worship God Almighty. But I'm grateful for the greatest nation that has ever existed on earth. It's the most eclectic. There has never been more ethnicities, more types. It's so fascinating when they talk that we're this systemically racist country. No, there's never been more mixture of people from all around the world in one nation. It's hard to do. They have different histories, different points of view, different ways of seeing the world. But what made America great was you get to keep your ethnicity, keep the best of what you have. Bring it here. Add to the mix. But you got to become one of us. And there has never been an experiment like that, a constitutional republic that worked until now. This is not only worth saving, it's essential if you want to remain free. So remember this and remember it well. Whenever they say you're politically incorrect, I always say thank you for the compliment, because nothing is more important than being a truth teller and standing boldly and unapologetically for what it means to have your own point of view and not self-censor. And remember, with Yakov Smirnoff, a man who knows better than all, that it's important to remain free and to pass it on. Folks, I'm just doing what I do. I'm putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.